Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you are having a good week. I'm doing well myself and enjoying the ride off into the collapse of Western civilization. Just keeps getting more honky, folks. This week we're going to round out the series of shows that I've been doing on the combat staff. I hope you guys have really gotten something out of these. It's interesting to me that when I began this series that there were other bloggers and channels that kind of echoed the material, presented their own takes on the same topic. They were linked over at the main Western Rifle Shooters site. If you go over there, Pete put those up, at least from a couple of different places. That's great. I think it's good to get the other perspective and inputs from people and their opinions and their presentations on, I mean, really any topic, but this in particular, because I think it speaks to the level of importance of this information. If those other channels saw my show and decided, to give their version of it, that's great. Thank you guys, thank you guys for watching and reiterating the material. It kind of, that's a boost for me, a confidence for me at least. It makes me think that maybe some people with probably far more experience than I have are out there watching what I've got to say, which is cool. But if they all just happen to present the same information as I did in a short time span, then I think what that says is that all of us came to the same conclusion around the same time and decided that this information was so important and the circumstances so dire that we needed to get it out there. And that's probably something that you should consider. If people think that this was, that important that we all decided to put this out there in our respective forums, then you might want to pay heed to what's being said. But anyway, okay. Without further delay, let's jump into the last couple of sections of the staff that we're going to cover. The last sections are down to they're kind of down the level of importance in terms of priority of activation. In other words, if you don't have somebody to fill these positions at the beginning, it's totally fine. You can wait. But in my opinion, they're not trivial. Okay, they're still very important, and they're important for a few different reasons. But the sections we're talking about this week are S1, which is personnel, or in the ICS system, it's admin. And then we're going to look at a couple of sections that the S system doesn't really have a dedicated S numbered position for, but they are present in the ICS system, and I think these two sections are particularly important to what we are doing, and so I think there's something that needs to be, you need to have somebody dedicated to this at least down the road, and that is the finance section and the public affairs section. The S system does sometimes have a civil affairs section where the PAO or the public affairs officer would be, but that's not always the case. It's not something that's always included in there, and I think it's important that we have that accounted for, and I'll explain why. And then we'll touch on a section that you could have but might not have, and that is the medical section. Now, these sections are important from a record-keeping standpoint, but the primary reason that they are important is they instill or they project a level of professionalism into the group, and that conveys legitimacy to what you're doing. And this is something I've touched on in some early videos, early in the channel's history, but probably don't get into the discussion very often. We probably don't talk about this as much as we probably should. It's often thrown out there by anyone who is opposing any kind of organization among Free-For, be they from the left, who are always going to trash what we do, or even people on the right who who still kind of cling to that idea that we're going to vote our way out of this, they'll often ask, well, what gives you the authority to do, X, whatever it is. Like I said, it's an old discussion, and I don't want to sidetrack this episode, but I want to at least brush against it here. The founders said that government derive their authority from the consent of the governed. And honestly, I don't entertain any idea that's counter to that. Okay, I just don't. I think that perfectly encapsulates it and perfectly explains it. And I don't think you really need to go anywhere outside of that sentence and that definition of it. You can assert that authority is handed down from on high, but even that still requires that, people have faith in the source of that investment, if you will. Bottom line is when you have when people have confidence and trust in the people acting in authority, they will give their consent. And when they do not have that, they will remove that consent. Okay? It doesn't, if you take this back to the days of monarchy, the king could rule as long as the people, and that included his underlings with force, as long as they agreed. The minute they decided, you're not doing things the way you're supposed to do, when they had the force to do so, they would take that guy out. So, say what you will, that's the bottom line. It still comes down to consent of people being governed. Professionalism builds confidence both inside the organization as well as from those outside the organization. And professionalism also builds trust in the organization from inside as well as outside. And there are a good many ways that professionalism can be instilled in an organization. Uniforms, there's one, a uniformed, a good appearance, standardized appearance, those kind of things. But having good records and keeping track of your money are really some of the basic functions that any organization should be doing. And if you can't do those, it really makes me question everything else that you're doing. So I think that's pretty critical. And I hope it makes that clear and doesn't take away from, the other things we're talking about, or the main material here. Like I said, I didn't want to sidetrack the whole conversation, but I thought it was important that we got that piece out there. But let's crack on, as the Brits say. Now, first up is the S1 or personnel section, and this section is vital to maintaining information about your people, as well as records of what's been done by the group. A running log or journal of activities and accomplishments for the whole group should be kept. It should be, just a history of the unit or the group, what have you. That's important. It's a professional organizations do this. And I think, individual records for each member should be kept. Now, I recommend that none of that material is ever kept in an electronic format that gets anywhere near a network, okay? Really, I would advocate you doing it all old school on paper, but I recognize that may be going a little too far. It's probably, there are pros and cons to that. But at a minimum, you need to have a clean computer and a hardwired, non-networked printer, okay? I mean a machine that has no Wi-Fi connection, period. No capability of being connected to a network without a physical connection. And it's never connected to the internet in any way. If you need software added to a machine, you put it on a flash drive, and then you move that flash drive to this machine and you load it up. And that's it. That's the only connection it has. It should have no capacity to be networked secretly, by some kind of Trojan horse or anything like that. Like something goes in and turns on a Wi-Fi connection that you're not aware of or something like that. Can't have that, okay? That's the only way that you can ensure that this information is not secretly copied by outsiders and, hacked and spit out there by these leftist hackers that are lurking out there just trying to find that kind of stuff. In terms of member information, I think you need to collect it. And I know this might be a hot subject for people, but, if you just think about things in terms of just a training day that you're having, and you get 35, 40 people together to do some training, you need emergency contact information for people, just in case you have an accident. Somebody has an accident, they're incapacitated, and you don't know their name, you don't know who to get in touch with, you don't know anything about this person. That's a problem, okay? You need a level of medical information for each member, so if they've got allergies or they've got some kind of medication that they need to be taking that maybe they didn't take, something like that. And then just from a practical standpoint, you need training records so you know what what standards they've met, what training they still need, this kind of stuff. And you can put this all on the individual and require that, kind of everybody be their own S1, where they're carrying some kind of set of documentation that has all that information in maybe a little book that, if you go back in history, they would have the pay book and it would have some of that kind of stuff in it. And each soldier would carry that. So maybe you have everybody do that on their own and they become their own S1, but you still need a shop to produce those documents and to distribute them and kind of help people control them. What we've done in the SAR organization that I'm in is, we have a document that has that contact information, that emergency medical stuff. And while you are in a mission, that document is with the admin section. So it's part of your check-in procedure. When you come in to check into a mission, you're signing in, you provide this document, it stays there with them, and then you pick it up as you leave. So you've always got the information. You've got it when you leave. It's not out of your control when you're not in the mission. But while you're in the mission and you're, the responsibility of somebody else, that document's there for them to use. So maybe you can come up with something like that for it. But, regardless, it's still an S1 function. There are ways to get around the actual maintaining of records, if that makes your people skittish. But there's another aspect that you should consider here. One of the upsides of states having the requirement to get a concealed carry permit is that it puts the person through a background check, and they are required to go through that every time they renew their permit. You don't get a renewal, you're reapplying every time, right? Well, that's a cheap and easy way for a group to get every member to go through a background check. Just require that prospective members produce a concealed carry permit, and you make a copy of it, and then you just track when it expires and require them to reproduce a new one at that time. Now, you know that you don't have somebody who's slipping through into the group, somebody who's got felonies or something like that. You know that they've gone through a background check that is independent of your organization. Now, it's not going to keep every bad actor out, but it's a good kind of low-level screening. If somebody says, "Well, I don't have a permit, and I'm not going to produce that," okay, well, you know what? You don't get to play along then. If you're not willing to jump through certain hoops and do certain things, and I recognize the arguments about that. I totally get it, but let's be freaking adults here and understand that we're not playing a game, okay? And if you need to filter out bad actors, and if this is a way that you need to filter out a bad actor, if it works, it works. It does what it's supposed to do. Don't open yourself and expose yourself to really simple, stupid infiltration tactics when you have a methodology that can screen that out. It's not going to be perfect. It's not, like I said, it's not going to get everybody, but it'll get the low hanging fruit. Now, if that's not the way you can go, or you choose not to go that route, then perhaps you have the resources to get every potential member on your own sent through a background check. Some people may have connections that they can do that on their own. Maybe your S1 just does some digging on individuals and looks into local arrest records or things like that. And However you choose to do this, I think everyone can agree that many organizations that have fallen victim to infiltration and disruption from bad actors could have avoided that if they just looked into each person that was wanting to join them. Just do some basic research, basic levels of investigation on prospective members. Again, this is big boy rules here, folks. This is important stuff. If you can't do these things, if you can't filter your own people, control your own people, and know information about your own people, how can you expect to do that about bad guys? Okay, I question your ability to gather intelligence if you don't realize that you've got somebody in your group that was arrested for drug possession or something 4 or 5 weeks ago, and now suddenly they show up to join your group. Could that be an indicator that the local PD may have used them as a confidential informant? Yes, it is. At any rate, that's the role of your personnel or your admin section. Now, let's move on to finance. Guys, it goes without saying that you will need money to operate, okay? Some form of currency. It does not have to be paper, Fed bucks. Maybe it's silver, maybe it's brass, or some trade item, eggs, goats, I don't care, whatever. You need it, and when you have it, you're going to need someone who can be trusted to keep track of it and keep records of it. This is not high-level accounting, that the black magic accounting that is done in corporate. This is just a simple ledger, okay? Funds in, funds out, and you have a confidence that if someone were to come along and want to audit it later, that it would be accurate. That's what you need. Having someone dedicated to this is critical for that professionalism I was speaking of. This is something that the military is not overtly really concerned with at this level. They have budgets and they do, keep track of that down to that level, but it's not something that's really like a dedicated finance section. It's done more under admin or logistics or reporting, these kind of things. Maybe it's even done at a higher level, division level, something like that. But it's sort of built into their system. It's not really a dedicated finance section. ICS has a dedicated finance shop, and I think that's something we have to emulate. We have to self-fund, and that means fundraising and someone to be in charge and manage that effort. And this kind of gets into how public or how overt you are going to be with your group, your organization. Maybe your fundraiser is a bake sale, if you're publicly known and overt. But if you intend to kind of stay low level and in the background and covert about what you're doing, maybe that fundraising is just a meeting with people who have money, but it's behind closed doors. Okay, it's a sit down with dinner, and hey, this is the finance guy. This is our leader. This is kind of what the group is about. Can you help us fund that? Either way, people want to know and have confidence that if they give money to an organization, that the organization is not going to take that money and just line the pockets of somebody, kind of behind the scenes. Oh, the money went in and it just disappeared and it was spent somewhere. We don't know. We could go on for hours about instances of that happening just in the last 10 years among the Free For community alone, not to mention other areas, other pursuits, other so-called charities and organizations that take money in and have no record of what is being done with it. Like I said, that builds trust and confidence if you've got somebody dedicated to tracking that can produce that information when requested. Hey, I want to know what you guys are doing. I've given this money to you, and I want to see where the money's going. Okay, here you go. Here's our books. Boom, open it up. We spent this money on training. It was ammo and medical, gear, so on and so forth, consumables, things that we used. We've spent this money on gas to move groups from here to here. Just whatever. You get what I'm talking about here. Somebody that can spell that stuff out. Now, let's cover Move on to public affairs or civil affairs and the public affairs officer or the PAO. This section is probably more critical than the others especially if you're public or you're overt in any way. How many times have we seen organizations kind of crumble because members make statements to the media that are counter to the mission of the group, the overall statements or overall missions, and then you've got somebody that, oh well, this person was interviewed over here and they said this, and then the group is playing, catch up and trying to get in front of a media disaster. When you have a PAO, it is their job exclusively to deal with any requests for comments or any interaction with the media. This ensures that you have one voice coming from your organization and one message. More importantly, one message. Having this in place means that you can communicate to each of your members that they're not to answer any questions or provide any statements to anyone outside of the organization, and that they are to direct all inquiries to the PAO. You don't say things like no comment because that implies you have something to hide, which is sad to say, but that is a reality, and that's the way we're taught is you don't say no comment, no comment. You say, well, I've been directed to send all requests for comment to the PAO or the in our case it's the incident commander, and allow them to field those questions, and I'll be happy to take you to that person right now, and if that's kind of how you handle a media person. Needless to say, this requires that your PAO be very well spoken, very smart, and very savvy to media methods and their tricks. You may not have somebody that fits that bill. And if that's the case, you may want to consider a less public presence or less visible way of operating. But, again, that's up to you. That's up to your group. But additionally, when you have a PAO, they are in charge of crafting the public image of the organization. They can, set up booths at the local fair, which can get into your fundraising and membership recruiting, those kind of things, or interact with local sheriff's office to kind of build interoperability with them. It really is dependent on what your organization intends to do. Do you intend to be a covert or hidden group that emerges only when it's safe to do so? Or do you intend to be a group that is building a relationship with the community and trying to become more of, a part of what that community sees as stability and order? Now, I don't have an opinion either way about that last point. I think both methods have their place, and one of them may fit your local situation better than the other. And I'm sure there are places where, the local community may be willing to see a group of private citizens, organize themselves into kind of a paramilitary organization. But the local government, local law enforcement may be absolutely counter to that happening. And so they do everything they can to stymie you and put obstacles and walls in place for you to do that. So that, being more public may not be the answer there. Maybe it is. Maybe that's the way you get around that. You say, hey, I got nothing to hide. I'm very open and very public about these things. I don't know. You may find places where the local government and law enforcement are happy to have you there, and they're willing to partner with you and kind of roll you into their plans for continuity of functionality in the event of a major emergency. Maybe they say, hey, look, you guys have a group, 35, 40 people that you can put into place. Can I call you if I've got a missing person and have you guys go help me find them? Do search and rescue type activities. Can I call you to do crowd control if I've got some, just at the fair, to do traffic control, these kind of things. So you might augment as a auxiliary to the local sheriff's department or something like that, or the local fire department, EMS, whatever it is in your situation. It's really going to depend on your area and how you think the situation is, okay? You'll have to apply that as you see fit. Now, lastly, I wanted to touch on the medical section. And again, this is something that is present in ICS that may or may not be in the S system, or at least, if it is, it's a special staff when it's there. Um, Now, given that this is a specialized field of work, this may be something that you just don't have the ability to put into place. However, you should still designate somebody to fill this position. And the reason being is you just need someone who can coordinate with local EMS if need be. And again, this may be, in a training scenario, in a training situation, you're having range day on a private rifle range and you want someone to be in charge of contacting 911 in case there's an accident. Okay, that person doesn't participate in the drills. They're just over here as your medical person. So maybe you don't have someone with medical skills, but that's not really what this section is about. It's about the administration and coordination between the sections that are doing the dangerous things and the medical people that will take care of them if things go sideways. So maybe the section chief can spend time getting medical people recruited into your group, or organize training for your group with medical professionals so they, learn how to use their IFACs, whatever, get CPR certified, whatever. Bottom line, this is a function that can be more or less. It just depends on the skill level of the person that's in that role. And again, you'll have to, fill that accordingly. Okay, so that's the end of section review, combat staff review. So I hope you got a lot out of these shows and you'll apply the information to good use. As I said when I began this, I believe we are well past time for headquarters units like this to be really all over the place and in place already functioning, but the clock is ticking. Just today we saw a poll that said 50% of Americans expect a civil war to happen in the next few years. Now, folks, that can't be more clear in my book. We few have been telling people for more than a decade that this was coming, and because we were really well in front of it, people ignored it and they called us crazy. And now at least half the people know that we were serious and we were pretty accurate. And that, like I said, that clock is ticking. Well, folks, that's all I have time for today. Like and subscribe. Share these videos with your normie friends, okay? The time is now to start spreading this message out there if you haven't already been doing it. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.